Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I'm going to be talking about a new understanding I believe I have of the Powered by the Apocalypse community. The Powered by the Apocalypse tabletop role-playing game designer community. Specifically the people who design Powered by the Apocalypse tabletop role-playing games. So here is the understanding that I have come to of the Powered by the Apocalypse designer community, right? This isn't the people who play, this is the people who design Powered by the Apocalypse games, which is actually a fairly large number of people. There are a lot of people who are actually, creating Powered by the Apocalypse games. Now, one of the reasons why I'm talking about this today is just recently, I really have come into I've been adding a lot of Powered by the Apocalypse tabletop role-playing games to my specific collection, right? And I'll just give you an example. Legacy, Life Among the Ruins. Also, Night Witches and City of Mist. Although I know that's a PBTA plus game. There's quite a few others that I've been reading through recently. I have no less than about 10 Powered by the Apocalypse tabletop role-playing games within my collection. I also, of course, have both Apocalypse World 2nd Edition, Apocalypse World, and then also, of course, Dungeon World, okay? And it's really interesting because I kind of feel like the Powered by the Apocalypse designers are a group of abandoned geniuses, right? So the reason why I say this is Vincent Baker created Powered by the Apocalypse, and then I think Sage LaTorra and Adam Cobell came and made that game specifically playable by the masses, right? And so I think, Apocalypse World, because it has these NSFW type moves in it, because it was just super gritty. I think one of the best ways to say it is it was a rated R tabletop role playing game. I think that's the best way to think about it. Is it really was just a rated R tabletop role playing game, which is really rare. There aren't many of them, right? So you had Apocalypse World, which was this super very long, complex, abstract tabletop rule set, right? But it actually lit a fire across the industry for people who wanted to create games under the PBTA banner, the Powered by the Apocalypse banner. But as I look at that community of designers, right, and each one of those designers having their own small community of players, right, I look at how different Powered by the Apocalypse is than any other tabletop role-playing game, right? And specifically when you're talking about essentially when a game gets as much momentum as Powered by the Apocalypse, when a rule set gets as much momentum behind it as the Powered by the Apocalypse rule set, which has no less than, I think, 30 to 50 tabletop role-playing games are available under PBTA, right? Now, basically, at that point, if you look at it, Wizards of the Coast, that's the D20 system, and basically D20's been running for a long time, since 3rd edition at least, and 5th edition really is D20 with some significant changes, but it's still very similar to the traditional D20 system. Now, what is Wizards of the Coast doing and Dungeons & Dragons doing with that game world? Well, one, they've made Dungeons & Dragons the most iconic tabletop role-playing game in the world. They pay incredible attention to that one game. And actually, one of the things that's really interesting is, by and large, Wizards of the Coast doesn't really deal with any other real tabletop role-playing game. They don't really make anything but Dungeons & Dragons. So they're saying, hey, we know we have the greatest tabletop role-playing game in the world. We're going to focus on that. We're going to build a massive community behind it, right? What happened with Monty Cook, right? So Monty Cook built Cypher. In that game, it has there's an entire company, Monty Cook Games, that has been built around Cypher. And you have Cypher, you have The Strange, you have Predation, you have, there's a Supers game in there now, there's Gods of the Fall, just a lot of games. And they are going out and getting, video games titles attached to those products, doing Kickstarters on the regular. They're launching Invisible Sun. They're continuing to build new games, right? And they are really, and Monty Cook himself is owning Cypher and saying, I'm hiring employees and I'm building this out, right? Fred Hicks, okay, he has the Fate system, right? People love Fate. There are dozens of tabletop role-playing games built around Fate, right? And Fred Hicks is owning that community, and he is like acting as the champion of that community and moving it forward. And he has real employees, and he continues to just move that along. Paizo is a completely different ball of wax. They have really high momentum and a lot of people that love Pathfinder, but in my opinion, Pathfinder it's just a Dungeons and Dragons clone, and those guys are just doing what they can to survive because their bread and butter all comes off of what's happening. Paizo lives and dies by how much people love Dungeons and Dragons, right? Basically, I think Paizo exists as, if you're sick of Dungeons and Dragons, if you're angry with WotC, we're here and you can play D&D with us, right? So that's what they're doing. But they're serious about it, and they make a lot of products, and they own it. They own that community, and they lead that community, and they nurture that community. So, when you look at Paizo, when you look at Mike Merles, when you look at Monty Cook, when you look at Fred Hicks, right? John Harper, in my opinion, Blades in the Dark is its own rule system, right? I don't consider it a Powered by the Apocalypse game because it has some of the same color stripes as PBTA, but it's not a PBTA game. Powered by the Apocalypse is its own thing, and John Harper. I really feel that John Harper could have, there could have been a community built around John Harper, his games and his rule set, right? But instead of doing that, John Harper said, I want to connect up with Evil Hat. And so Blades in the Dark, in my opinion, the most important rule set in all of tabletop role-playing games, the most elegant, the most well-crafted. All of that is, he said, hey, rather than build an entire community around myself, right, which I think would have been completely doable, right, what we're going to do is we are going to connect with Evil Hat. And there's a lot of benefit with that. I think Blades of the Dark came out with a lot of momentum behind it because of, specifically because of attaching with Evil Hat. And that really shined both brands. I think it put a lot more shine and a lot more momentum behind, specifically behind John Harper, but it put, it brought an incredible rule set to Evil Hat that wasn't Fate, and Evil Hat really needed that. I think that was a really positive thing to do, right? Well, what's happening with Vincent Baker, right? So Vincent Baker builds Apocalypse World. It's pretty inaccessible because it's a rated R game. Vincent Baker does not seem concerned with that in any way. And what he does is he says, hey, PBT, he says, the rule set in Apocalypse World, he didn't even name it Powered by the Apocalypse, in my opinion. From my knowledge, I don't think he even named it that. And then what he said is, hey, you want to build a rule set, with my, you want to build a game with my rule set, you have to give me credit, right? And you have to touch base, right? And I think everybody who's built PBTA does that. They're able to move forward with a PBTA game, but you have to give credit to Vincent Baker. But then you could keep the profits, right? And so that's my understanding of the PBTA, right? But Vincent Baker is not sweeping that all into himself, right? And the reality is, it really doesn't look to me like he is holding up the banner or drawing a community to himself. What it really looks like to me is a lot like Occupy Wall Street. Like, it looks like a leaderless movement, right? Where Vincent Baker, unlike any of those other, really rule set champions, Mike Merles and Fred Hicks and Monty Cook and John Harper underneath Fred Hicks, now under Evil Hat, all those, Paizo doing its thing, under all those, those creators, right? They are owning those those communities and acting as champions who lead those communities. But it really looks to me, and then what about, so under Powered by the Apocalypse, what about Sage Latora and Adam Cobell, right? Are they the actual champion leaders of Dungeon World? And I think the answer is no, right? Both of those guys are very proud of Dungeon World, but it's not their whole world. It's not the hill they're going to die on. They both are doing a million other games, doing content for other games, really building up strong, especially Adam Cobell, building up very, very strong celebrity content, building up a strong media presence, right? Really attaching themselves to dynamic tabletop role-playing game content that is not just Dungeon World centric. That's all over the board, right? And dealing with a lot of content in different areas, right? So that's my issue. Is like, I just don't see a champion of PBTA. There's not one central leader, right? But the rule set for PBTA, which I think is the longest, most complex, most abstract rule set, right? There are absolutely rule sets that are more complex than PBTA, but there are not ones that are longer, more complex, and more abstract. It really, one of the reasons why I'm talking about this today is I just don't know what to do with PBTA. I really don't like the rule set, and I want to walk away from all these PBTA games, but I can't. And the reason why is the worlds are so compelling, and the fire that has been lit under these designers to build these PBTA games with these super unique settings and these super unique worlds is just unprecedented. It's not like a lot of other rule sets, but it looks so different because it doesn't have a central champion, right? And the other thing with these central champions is the banner is handed from one champion to another, especially with if you look back on Dungeons and Dragons, it was Gygax, Moldvay, Hainsu, Tweet, Merles. The order might have been mixed up there a little bit for a couple of them, but the lead designer is being handed off from one to another, right? And there was never Adam Cobell and Sage Latora with Dungeon World were standing next to or a little behind Vincent Baker, but there wasn't a handoff, right? So the structure of leadership within the PBTA designer community doesn't look like any other tabletop role-playing game, right? Now, what should be done about that, right? I think it's a problem. It looks like a problem to me because, and the reason why is Occupy Wall Street. Nobody hardly even remembers it now. Leaderless movements don't succeed, right? This has been proven, right? And I think that I would really, and also Apocalypse World 2nd edition came out. It really it has not cleaned up the PBTA rules. It has not made it more accessible or made it so that the game isn't what I think it is. I think PBTA rule set demands a highly skilled game master and then 4 highly skilled game masters in the player seats, which is just like, what? Is that a thing? Why are we here, right? So I think that's overall is what we're dealing with PBTA is we've got this leaderless movement, right? Now, so here's what I think. One, Scott Garibay's wrong. All right, and nothing's wrong here, and it should remain a leaderless movement, right? That's a possibility, right? Okay, and everything's fine, and PBTA can just stay super niche and run by game masters and play by game masters, or right, rescue. There need to be rescue missions. Okay, so I work with this lady. She's a very nice lady, and she rescues dogs, right? Just cares deeply about dogs, and literally, just like half her home is dedicated to rescuing dogs, and she'll rescue these dogs and then take care of them and then and then give them to new homes, and right. So I'm like, do we need a rescue mission for PBTA? Because these games are the rule set is so long, so complex, and so abstract that I don't think really many actual players can play it, and all those great worlds remain super niche and really don't grow, right? They don't really grow that much, right? And so if you had rescues where these games could be pulled over into Index Card RPG or Tiny D6, right? Accessible rule systems, or Cypher, or even Fate, right? I wouldn't go Fate because that's still pretty indie. I think Tiny D6 and Index Card RPG they're just beautiful, brilliant, small reduxes that look like Dungeons and Dragons that anybody can pick up and play, and even just a regular game master, not a highly skilled game master, can run, right? Because I would really love to see Life Among the Ruins under there. I would like to see, Night Witches under an Index Card RPG tabletop role playing game. So do we need a rescue? Set up a rescue mission where people go in and then kind of convert these games over into accessible, runnable rule sets, right? Or the other thing is, or here's the other one. Vincent Baker anoints a champion and says, listen, I'm a wonky, super weird creative, and that's cool. I'm the Wes Anderson of tabletop role-playing games. I can't do leadership, right? Or I don't want to do leadership. I think Vincent Baker's more than capable of doing leadership. I don't think he wants to, right? But he says, hey, I see the momentum. I see all these people designing games. I now anoint this person as the leader of our leaderless movement. And then that person can carry PBTA forward, right? And whoever she is can just, do a good job and carry it forward, right? So I think those are the three options. Personally, I would like to see the rescue option go forward. Now, all of this, I think, should belong to Vincent Baker, right? And I'm hoping that he just kind of opens his eyes and sees what's happening in the community and sees that the PBTA designers are what I believe they are, which is a group of abandoned geniuses, right? And then just anoints a leader for them, right? And then, calls forward, calls up Monty Cook, calls up Fred Hicks. He can get him on the line. Everybody loves Vincent Baker, right? Calls Luke Crane, right? I didn't even talk about Luke Crane. I think he's another. I'm not even going to touch that one right now. But calls up Mike Merles and says, hey, I need you to get some of these awesome, worlds into or actually calls Alan Barr specifically of Tiny D6, right? Calls up Runehammer Games of Index Card RPG and says, rescue some of these worlds, get these into accessible rule systems where people can run, can actually run them. But I don't think it's in a great state right now. It's in a state that worries me personally, right? Now, granted, this is a very niche concern, but that's, I really think the PBTA, they have a kind of an amount of sympathy from me right now, because I really feel PBTA is a group of the PBTA designers, the people designing PBTA tabletop role-playing games are truly just they really are just a group of abandoned geniuses. And I would like there to be either a rescue option that happens or an anointing. Take care.